Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Town of Wolfeboro Zoning Board of Adjustment to order. It's 7 o'clock. We have a full board this evening. To my far right is Hank Y., a member of the board. To his left is Susan Razor. She also acts as our clerk. To her left is Mike Hodder. He's our vice chairman. I'm Fred Tedeschi. I act as chairman of this distinguished group. To my immediate left is Sarah Silk. She's also a member. To her left is Dave Senecal, who's an alternate, and to his left is Tim Cronin, who's also an alternate. Sue, would you read the first notice, please?
The first matter before the ZBA tonight is case number 11-V-17 concerning tax map number 268, lot 41. The applicant is William Ortiz. It's a public hearing for a variance under 12, section 175-80 of the Wolfeboro Planning and Zoning Ordinance to allow for the construction of a 180 square foot addition, 12 foot by 15 foot, to enlarge an existing bedroom on the first floor, front southwest corner. The property is located at 70 Middleton Road. A site visit was held at approximately 6:15 this evening and was attended by all of those present at this meeting. Notice was provided to the appropriate town offices and to the Ortizes, Klingon Smiths, Therian Marcel Revocable Trust, Joanne Parisi Irrevocable Trust, Wyman, the Wolfeboro Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, and Corson.
Thank you. Mr. Ortiz, you'll make the presentation?
Good evening.
Please identify yourself. We know who you are, but it's being recorded.
William Ortiz of 70 Middleton Road, Wolfeboro, New Hampshire. Here tonight to ask the board to allow a variance of 12 feet on the front setback of section 12, 175-80, which requires a 30-foot setback. So I'm asking for a 12-foot variance of that setback. The existing lot is irregular sized with a pre-existing single-family home built in 1939. Adding the proposed addition anywhere else would become kind of physically impossible based on what you saw at the site examination. The setback would not be obtainable, and the current structure sits at 18 feet from the lot line, and the proposed addition will increase the setback by 1 foot, so the addition will be at 19 feet.
Okay. Would you go through the criteria in your application, please?
Yep.
Thank you.
So the variance will not be contrary to the public interest because the use as a single-family dwelling remains the same. The use of any abutting landowners is not compromised by the encroachment. The addition will be of current code, safety, and improve aesthetics of the current house. The slightly increased size will bring an increased tax amount paid and a higher home value in the neighborhood. The spirit of the ordinance is observed because the use is not changing and the building will still be in the residential classification. The neighborhood will be unchanged in respect to it remains a single-family home. The current home exists in its location without any adverse effect on the abutting use, safety, or welfare, and the small addition will not change that. The spirit is observed simply in the granting of a variance. Substantial justice is done because there are no real adverse effects to other landowners or abutters in the neighborhood. No harm to use, value, safety, or welfare. My gain of a variance is not affecting others negatively, and not granting only affects my use of the property. Substantial justice is done by granting this variance. The values of surrounding properties will not be diminished because the addition fits in the building style of the home and in proportion with the size, roof lines, color, and finishes. The addition will make the home more valuable, only bringing surrounding values up. Aesthetics of the home will be new and of quality fitting with the neighborhood. The curb appeal in regards to value will increase, also increasing the surroundings. And literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship because the special conditions of this property that distinguish it from other properties in the area are as follows. The building lot is smaller than any currently allowed standard. The house already sits in an encroached front setback, and locations of the septic make for specific areas of the home that can't be expanded upon, as well as the driveway. The zoning restriction interferes with the reasonable use, and the variance will not injure the public or private rights of others. Owing to the special conditions of the property set forth above that distinguishes it from other properties in the area, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the purpose of the ordinance applicable to the application and the specific application of that provision to the property, because the existing house does not fit the applicable ordinance, the 30-foot front setback, and enforcing it would not allow the expanded use of the house that would otherwise be a reasonable option for existing conforming homes in the area to expand their home. The proposed use is reasonable because the use remains unchanged, a single-family home, and the use is exactly in line with all homes, land, and abutters in the area and zoning district. The use does not waver from residential home use.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Anyone else wish to speak in favor of the proposed application? Anyone wish to speak against the proposed application? Okay, seeing no movement, thank you very much. Question?
I don't have a question. I would just like to make a comment. When we went out to look at this site, he had very clearly marked on the ground exactly where the addition was going to be, and I just wanted to thank you publicly for that, because it really is a wonderful assist to this board to have it so clearly demarcated on the actual lawn itself, and thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'll be happy to second that, too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Clarifying question. Parts of the application indicated an encroachment of 12 feet and others said an 11-foot encroachment based on 19 feet from the property line. I just want to make clear what the maximum encroachment will be if the board grants a variance. Okay.
So, yeah, to clarify, I'm looking for 12 feet, a 12-foot variance.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I'll close the public hearing and open up the matter for discussion among the board members. Shall we go through the items one by one?
Sure. Give you my opinion. Criteria numbers 1 and 2 together, as we have been advised to do by the court. Approving the variance will not deform the purpose of the residential district zoning ordinance, 175-78, or alter the essential character of the neighborhood, as it will not materially alter its goal of medium-density development, nor will approval negatively impact the public health, safety, or welfare by the construction of a modest additional expansion on a bedroom.
Other comments? Dave?
Yeah, just one comment that this is enlarging one of the bedrooms, so there's no increase on the septic system. Still one bedroom, or 2 bedrooms, whatever it is. So it's not adding a bedroom or expanding a bedroom.
Is he supposed to comment now? Okay.
So yes, the home would remain a 3-bedroom home. It would just be enlarging the one downstairs. It'd still stay a 3-bedroom home.
Other comments, questions?
Clear.
I'll entertain a motion. Or want to go through the other? Let's go through the others. Yeah.
As far as number 3 is
Substantial
concerned,
justice.
I'll take it if the board desires. I detect no gain to the town substantial enough to offset the loss sustained by the applicant by denial, save a strict, and in this case, unreasonable enforcement of 175/80's dimensional controls.
Now, I would observe it's just extending the existing footprint of the building without coming any closer to the road than it already is. Number 4, values of surrounding property. There's really been no testimony of any diminution of value. Sarah?
Just to segue from your previous comment, he showed us that it will be 18 inches back from the eave on the front of the existing building and 12 inches back from the edge of the existing buildings, so indeed it will not be encroaching any closer to the street.
Absent overwhelming testimony contra, I have to assume that the property values of surrounding homes will not be negatively affected by approval of this variance.
Any other comments on criteria number 4? Number 5?
My opinion, the placement on its lot of this non-conforming structure creates a special condition. It does not allow construction of the requested extension in any other location that makes both logical and humane sense. And I'll go on with numbers A, 1, and 2 if the board will indulge. Number Roman lowercase I. The fair and substantial relationship test has already been passed during the application of criteria numbers 1 and 2 to this application. It is clear that the purpose of the ordinance is not frustrated by approval of this application, and relaxation of its dimensional controls will not defeat its goals. And Roman lowercase ii, adding a second bedroom to a one-bedroom or enlarging a bedroom to a one-bedroom house is not an unreasonable request. Or
I don't think it's...
I think it would be enlarging one bedroom in a 3-bedroom house.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Enlarging the bedroom on the first floor and not changing anything
I
else.
would be enlarging, the current bedroom is 12 by 12. I'll be enlarging it to basically 20 by 12.
Oh.
Yeah,
It is not an unreasonable request, in my opinion.
I concur. Any other comments? Discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve. Pardon? Case number 11-Cap V-17, tax map 268-41, applicant William Ortizi for a variance from Article 12, Section 17580, for the construction of a 180-square-foot addition to enlarge an existing bedroom on the first floor front southwest corner of the house with an intrusion into the setback of 12 feet, with conditions numbers 1 through 5 noted in the planner's review and was cited by reference.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Variance is granted. Susan, would you read the second notice, please?
The second case before us is case number 12-V-17 concerning tax map number 217, lot 35. The applicant is 15 North Main Street, LLC. It's a public hearing for a variance under 13, Section 175-145 of the Wolfeboro Planning and Zoning Ordinance to allow for the conversion of 5 commercial office units on the second floor to 3 residential units. The property is located at 15 North Main Street. A site visit was held at approximately 6:30 p.m. prior to this meeting and was attended by all the members present tonight. Copies of the notice were provided to the appropriate town offices and to the following, and it's a very long list: 29 Mill Street Holdings, LLC, Embry Properties, LLC, SB Hammond Realty, LLC, Putonen Bradley, Mark and Joan Hill Revocable Trust, Ritter, Wolfeboro Marketplace Association, Wolfeboro Bay Manor Condos, 15 North Main, LLC, White Mountain Survey and Engineering, Incorporated, First Church of Christ Scientist, Wolfeboro Marketplace, Thomas and Mary Bryant, LLC, Wolfeboro Marketplace / MasterCard, 37 North Main Street, Unit B's, LLC, 37 North Main Street, LLC, Smith, Capelli Hair and Salon, LLC, 29 Mill Street Holdings, LLC. Jennifer Khalid Holdings, Incorporated. Hammond, Maxfield Jr., Bradley, George A. and Rita Farr Joint Trust. Beckwith, Wolfeboro Bay Manors Condo. Phillips, Putonin Family Trust. Brennan, Brockney, Sheila K. O'Connell 2007 Trust. Intuitive Construction and Property Management, LLC. Lakes Region Discovery Trust. Mountaintops Incorporated. Heidelberg Realty, LLC. Hutchinson Family Trust. 22-24 North Main Street Trust. Monashee Realty, LLC. Hutchinson Family Trust. 26 North Main Street, LLC. Scott, Teresa Cates Revocable Trust. Susan Frasner Revocable Trust. Hughes, Honey Penny, LLC. Thomas and Mary Beth Bryant, LLC. Englam Incorporated. Monashee Realty Trust. 16 North Main Street, LLC. Heidelberg Realty, LLC. Lions Ridge Realty Trust. Bronzetti/Reinman.
Thank you very much.
Nice job.
I think that's the longest list we've ever had.
The longest one I can ever remember reading.
Yeah. Mr. Rhines? You have the
Yes,
floor.
good evening. For the record, I'm Jim Rhines from White Mountain Survey and Engineering, and I'm here representing 15 North Main LLC in their request for a variance from Article Roman 23, Section 175-145B, to permit the conversion of 5 commercial office units into 3 residential units. The property in question is located at 15 North Main Street, tax map 217, lot 35. The lot is 25,900 square feet per a July 4th, 1995 Linden Design Phase 2 site plan, which you see here. The footprint of the commercial space on the reference plan is 11,540 square feet. If we subtract that 11,540 square feet from the 25,900 square feet, the net result is 14,360 square feet, or 0.33 acres. The permitted density in Article 23, Section 175, 145B is 6 units per acre. Therefore, the 0.33 acres multiplied by the 6 units per acre gives you 2 residential units allowed, and we are requesting 3. With that, I will go through the criteria of why we feel that this variance is something that the board could approve. The first is that the variance will not be contrary to the public interest, and as is noted in the Zoning Board Handbook for local officials dated November 2016, for the variance to be contrary to the public interest, it must unduly and to a marked degree violate the basic zoning objectives of the zoning ordinance. And to determine this, the zoning ordinance, the zoning handbook suggests that you ask yourself the question, does the variance alter the essential character of the neighborhood or threaten the health, safety, or general welfare of the public? So I went to the purpose of the Central Business District in 175-88-7, and it states that it is, quote, designed to protect the character of the existing downtown, maintaining its pedestrian scale while promoting a healthy mix of retail, professional office, medical, and residential uses within the district, and promoting mixed uses on individual properties. It is intended to enable the downtown to remain a vibrant, compact commercial center serving the needs of the community residents, the region, and tourists as the economic center, and to promote a complementary and diverse mix of commercial and residential uses. So I submit to you that granting this variance to allow the applicant to convert 5 existing commercial office units into 3 residential units will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, nor will it jeopardize the health, safety, or general welfare of the public. I state this because it reinforces the mixed use on an individual property that the CBD is designed to encourage. It abuts the property with a mix of residential and commercial uses. It will reduce the intensity of the use and the total number of units by 2, and it will be internal to the structure, so it will be imperceptible to the public. For these reasons, the essential character of the neighborhood will not be altered and will not threaten the health, safety, or general welfare of the public. Therefore, the requested variance will not be contrary to the public interest. Number 2, the spirit of the ordinance is observed because, as the handbook states, one way to ascertain whether the granting of the variance would violate the basic zoning objectives is to examine whether it would alter the essential character of the locality. And as demonstrated above, it is clear that granting the variance would not alter the essential character of the locality. Another approach the handbook suggests is to determine whether granting the variance would violate the basic zoning objectives, is to examine whether granting the variance would threaten the health, safety, or general welfare. And again, as demonstrated above, it is clear that granting this variance request would not threaten the public health, safety, or welfare of the citizens of Wolfeboro. Number 3, substantial justice is done. The handbook suggests that perhaps the only guiding rule is that any loss to the individual that is not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice. So it is my position that the loss to the property owner, if they were not allowed to convert the 5 commercial office units to 3 residential units, would most definitely be a greater loss to the property owner than any potential gain to the general public by not allowing the conversion. Therefore, by this measure, it is clear that granting the variance would do substantial justice. Number 4, the values of surrounding properties will not be diminished because the proposed changes will be contained in the existing building and because the intensity of the use will be reduced. This request is rather benign. This fact, coupled with the fact that the, quote, surrounding properties, close quote, include a mix of commercial, residential, and mixed commercial and residential, suggests that the values to the surrounding property values will not be diminished by this request. Number 5, the literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance that would result in an unnecessary hardship because of the special conditions of this property that distinguish it from other properties in the area are as follows. The special conditions that distinguish this property from other properties in the area are a combination of the historic number of uses and the density of the number of commercial units on this small parcel that have received approval from the planning board. And owing to those special conditions of the property as set forth above, no fair and substantial relationship exists between the purpose of the ordinance applicable to this application and the specific application of that provision to the property. So the handbook notes that to answer this question, the board should ask themselves, is the restriction on the property necessary to give the full force and effect to the purpose of the ordinance, or can relief be granted to this property without frustrating the purpose of the ordinance? And is the full application of the ordinance to this particular property necessary to promote a valid public purpose? Once the purposes of the ordinance have been established, the property owner needs to establish that because of the special conditions of the property, the application of the ordinance provision to this property would not advance it in a, quote, fair and substantial way. So as I mentioned before, the purpose of the ordinance is designed to protect the character of the existing downtown, maintaining its pedestrian scale, while promoting a healthy mix of retail, professional offices, medical and residential uses within the district, and promoting mixed uses on individual properties. It is intended to enable the downtown to remain a vibrant, compact commercial center, serving the needs of the community residents, the region, and tourists as an economic center, and to promote a complementary and diverse mix of commercial and residential uses. So it is my opinion that there is no fair and substantial relationship that exists between the purpose of the ordinance applicable to this application and the specific application to the provisions to this property. This is because granting the requested relief will reduce the total number of units on this property while adding residential use, thereby promoting the mixed use on an individual property, which is one of the purposes of the ordinance. The parking requirements for 3 residential units is 5 spaces, while the parking requirement for commercial units equaling 4,528 square feet is 19 spaces. Therefore, granting the requested relief reduces the number of units on the total number of units on the lot and the parking demand. It is for these reasons that we believe the application of the provisions of the ordinance to this particular property will not advance it in a fair and substantial way. And part 2 of that is that the proposed use is reasonable one, and because one of the purposes of the ordinance for this zone is promoting a mix of uses on individual properties, converting 5 commercial units into 3 residential units is completely in sync with the purpose of the ordinance and is therefore a reasonable one. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board or the public may have.
Questions? Sarah?
I have a couple questions, and I just need some things confirmed. How many commercial units will remain if the second floor is turned into residential units?
I do not know the answer to that, Sarah. The property received site plan approval for the total number, and all I was concerned about was that they were reducing the number of units, so I thought that was...
Okay, I see Matt looking. I'll ask Matt later. On the rental units, the 3 units, should they be approved, can you confirm what type of rental they'll be, daily, monthly, yearly?
Yes, they were residential units that would be an annual rental. I called the manager of the LLC between the site visit and now and confirmed that they are not going to be daily or monthly. They're going to be if someone wanted to live in there and rent for a year's lease, then that's what would be available.
Okay. Fred, can I ask Matt a question? Matt, I see you looking at something. Do you have information from the planning board approval to establish how many rental units will be left?
I'm not sure how many rentals will be
Okay, and the reason I was asking that is we observed parking spaces, and in the application on page 3, it says that there would be 5 spaces needed for the 3 residential units. And it stated that the parking requirement for the 5 commercial units, which will be converted, is 19 spaces. However, when we look on the ground, we see 9 spaces parallel with the building and 2 more spaces at the end. So I'm thinking it's a little disingenuous here to talk about going from 19 spaces to 5 when you only have 11 to start with. And then we don't know how many of those 11 are actually going to be needed for the remaining commercial units in the building. And we're changing the effect of parking because when you have people that are renting, those vehicles may be there 24 hours a day if the people work downtown, or perhaps they won't be there 24 hours a day. We do know that they would most likely be there overnight. I think it's really important for us to know how many units are left commercial in that building. It seems as if there's inadequate parking regardless.
The parking requirements in the C1 CBD are flexible. They offer a 3-pronged or 3-option approach for any use in the downtown district. One can either provide on-site parking spaces, they can provide a payment in lieu of parking, or they can identify off-street parking spaces within 500 feet of the location. This location, I believe, takes advantage of the off-street parking within 500 feet. Further, I would add that as part of the discussions with the ownership of this LLC, they were willing to identify on-site parking spaces for this use, should this be approved by the board, particularly because I believe the ordinance does not allow off-site parking for a residential or multifamily use in the C1 CBD. So one condition that this board could explore would be the designation of the 5 required parking spaces for these 3 multifamily units, the dedication of those spaces from the existing spaces on site. But for the commercial uses, the owners are fully within their right to be able to delineate parking within 500 feet of the site, which I would expect that they would do based on the location of this property, and certainly based on the prior approved plan. So the short answer is this parking is not required to be provided on site.
Okay, now where would this parking be within 500 feet?
So the ordinance provides that for commercial use, you have to identify parking, adequate parking, per the standard that's in the ordinance within 500 feet of the location of that use.
Right, and I'm just trying to picture where that would actually be in real life, because there's an extremely bad parking problem that goes on in back of the area where the foot doctor is and all of that. And I know that previously, perhaps now, I'm not certain, there was a business that had classes, and when they had classes, it was a nightmare, because the classes were being held in this building, and they were actually using the parking for next door, which is also already allocated. So I'm just still trying to picture.
At the risk of appearing to be an advocate for this case, I just want to point out that this case is actually reducing the demand in downtown parking. We're taking the demand from a 19-space demand to a 5-space demand. I think that's just an objective observation. I agree that there's a systemic parking issue in sections of the downtown, but
Right, but with all due respect, you may be reducing the need for parking spaces, but we have 11 parking spaces that exist, period. So you're not reducing parking spaces that don't exist. You can't get credit for something that doesn't exist now. They have 11, boom, that's it, 11. So if you take 5 of those and designate it, they now have 6 parking spaces. A math challenge, but I can do this. They now have 6 parking places left that have to satisfy all the other parking requirements in that building. And I think we're going to come up short, that's all.
May I just add to that? I didn't, the implication of the reduction wasn't meant to be disingenuous. It was to say that, just as Matt did, that the demand is reduced. The other thing, I don't want the board to take action thinking that there's 11 spaces, because there's 9. I looked at this afterwards, Sarah. The approved one says approved 9 spaces, and there's 7 across the front and 2 over on the side. So there's 9 there on that 11 by 17 and on the full size. But to Matt's point, and I will risk being an advocate, the fact that because the CBD doesn't require the parking spaces to be on site for commercial, by eliminating 19 needed parking spaces for commercial space, you're reducing the demand within 500 feet of this property. So it is an actual reduction in parking demand. Now, on site, they need 5 for residential, but they have 9. They don't need any for commercial. This could be approved at site plan with no on-site parking spaces commercially.
I totally understand what you're saying, but I'm still saying that in reality, you have a lot of demand for parking that doesn't appear to be taken care of in reality. That's all I'm saying, and I'm just concerned that it will make the problem down there for parking. Has anyone talked to the Economic Development Committee or the Chamber or anyone who are always concerned about parking? I don't know.
Your current first floor use is the same size as the second floor?
Yes, 4,528 square feet, I believe.
Is that one unit, or is that broken up?
Oh, that's broken up into multiple units.
How many units are there roughly?
Well, there's 5 upstairs. I'm thinking there's
Probably five.
Probably 5 downstairs.
My observation while we were there is there's 7 businesses that are on the lower level that are using those parking spaces as well as the commercial units above.
I was looking at the balance of residential and commercial. We have suffered loss of several commercial spaces already. Have you done any survey to determine whether this will increase demand for the commercial space? Will this we're not just looking at your building, the building you represent, but the whole area. What does it do to the area in terms of changing the mix of commercial and residential?
Well, it reduces the number of commercial spaces, but I think if the demand were there for the commercial units, I don't think they would be before you. I think that they have vacancies in the commercial space, and therefore they're seeking to generate revenue in a different.
Are they long-term vacancies or short-term? Because we don't grant variances just because of economic cycles. You're looking at long-term trends here.
No, I understand that, but I mean, one of the criteria of the CBD is to create mixes on a single piece of property, and this property doesn't have any residential now, so we're advancing the purpose with this request.
There are others who would cite yours as meeting the commercial needs, and they increase the residential on theirs. So we're not looking just at a building, and I accept your point that you could argue that each building should have a mix. That's not necessarily the way we've looked at it over the years. Sarah?
Well, another concern that I have is that as you cut down, as Fred, you were just mentioning, about commercial pieces of property and units and whatnot downtown in the compact area, then businesses start to creep out 28. And it's not a real good example because it's not the same type of business, but we have now Sal's out there, and that used to be downtown. And now you've got more and more commercial going out there in an area that was mixed residential and business. And I'm just wondering if that's going to put more pressure going out towards the ag district because of the fact that we're cutting down on the number of available units downtown. And I guess that's an Economic Development Committee question, and I don't know if they've ever been asked.
I guess the only thing I understand and respect that, I guess the only thing I would say is just as they got approved commercially once before, if they convert this to residential and then all of a sudden there was a huge commercial demand, they could easily come back and meet that demand by converting it back to commercial, if that made sense.
Will the 5 spaces be listed as reserved parking of the 9 that are available?
If that's permitted or required, then yes. I guess that would be.
Which leaves 4 spaces for the rest of the businesses there. I think that's your challenge with your renters.
Well, again, no on-site parking is required by zoning. So you could look at it that there's excess parking spaces for the residential uses.
Be serious.
If this application were approved, I would want to make that a condition that there be 5 spaces designated for the 3 residential units on the second floor of the structure.
That would be, I'm sure that would be a perfectly acceptable condition.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Other questions? Certainly.
Your client is asking for a variance to convert from a commercial to a residential use structure on the second floor of this structure, from 5 commercial to 3 residential uses.
Correct.
Is your client also asking for a variance from the density requirement, 175, 145?
That's what we requested the
You're
variance
asking
of.
two variances here or just one variance?
Just the
One
one.
variance to cover both density violation and change of use?
There's no need for a variance for the change in use.
There's
It's
not.
strictly the density.
Okay, just density.
Yeah.
Could you explain what sorts of residential uses? Sarah asked a question and you answered that this would be year-round rentals. What sorts of residential units are these going to be? Are they single-family, one transient person renting for a year, multiple family, one-bedroom, two-bedroom, three-bedroom units?
I don't know the mix. I believe that they would be one and two bedroom units, so that a single person or someone that, I would assume a couple and a child could move in or something.
And these would be lived in 24/7, 365, or
Yes.
the term of the rental?
Yes.
And in what way does that not increase the current density? When you have 5 commercial units which are being used 9 to 5, 5 days a week? And
I don't know that they're restricted to 9 to 5.
of course not, they're not, but most people who go to work in the morning come home at the end of the day. They don't live in their offices. People that will be living in the residential units will be living there year-round, or at least the length of the lease, 24/7, using town services, being visible on the street, parking in designated areas. In what way does this conversion not affect the density requirement of this zone? I can see the change of use. This zone, this district, I beg your pardon, is designed for a mix of commercial and residential. That makes for a lively and vital neighborhood. But you're changing from a commercial use, temporary occupancy, 5 units, to residential use, full-time occupancy, 3 units, 2 bedrooms, husband, wife, 1, 2 children perhaps. I don't see how that reduces density. To me, it's at the least a wash, if not an increase in density.
Well, it's in the reduction is in the number of units, but again, there are two residential units are allowed. They're looking for 3, and my thought was that you're reducing the units, but these, presumably these people are going to, if they're renting, they probably are working, and so they're going to be out during the day, so those parking spaces will be available. And so, shared parking, a typical shared parking analysis allows for residential because the peak times are at different times, where residential is at nighttime, and like you said, generally more of it is a 9 to 5.
Mr. Chairman, can I direct a question to the planner? The language of 175, 145B says specifically, density shall not exceed 6 units per acre. Are units defined anywhere in our ordinances?
I'm not sure the term unit is defined specifically.
There's no purpose given for 175 or for the special requirements for the CBD district that override the ordinary requirements other than what is stated in the ordinance. We understand that the ordinance assumed that a unit could be either commercial or residential, and it was interchangeable?
I would say so.
And the number of folk living inside those units was irrelevant?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Sarah?
Well, I just have the question about, we talked about designating the parking spots for being for the rental units, but then I just heard a reference to shared parking. So can we get a clarification on that?
My reference to shared parking was simply that shared parking recognizes the differences in the times of peak. I wasn't talking about it as far as applying the shared parking analysis to this concept, or this application.
And, go ahead, Matt.
Just as a point of clarification, I don't believe the ordinance requires that residential units be provided for with parking on site. I believe that can also be provided for with off-site parking. And so I think the board would recommend include a condition of that nature, but the ordinance does not specifically call for it, in my opinion.
Whether it's residential or commercial, the CBD does not have any specific parking requirements. You can find any space within 500 feet.
The only thing I would add, and this is really an interpretation here, is under the multifamily provisions, it does note that in the CBD and the Wolfeboro Falls districts, parking shall be permitted within the side and rear yard areas, except for yard areas which abut a residential district boundary. In my opinion, that does not say parking must be provided within the boundaries of the property. So in my opinion, parking does not need to be on site.
Matt, can I ask one more question? The parking on street, on Main Street, is it limited to 2 hours during the daytime?
That might be a question for somebody else, unfortunately. I hate to say that.
And also, I forgot the second part of my question. Never mind.
It does cause a hardship.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I do believe that if the applicant is amenable to it, it might be in the board's best interest to have a condition for designated parking on site.
Oh, my other question was, is there a 24-hour parking allowed on Main Street? Can you leave a car there during overnight hours and that sort of thing? Because
I believe is there a snow plowing ban during winter season? So that's actually exactly why I'm recommending designated spots. I think that there is a snow plowing ban on obviously South and North Main, so I think on-site provision would be important.
There are currently dedicated parking spaces for businesses in the Wolfeboro Marketplace with tow-away provisions for those who are in violation.
Mm-hmm.
Would your client be amenable to setting aside 5 spaces for the renters in the residential units on the second floor, which are designated specifically for their use?
Yes, I'm certain they would.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want to go again?
I guess then that would be up to somebody else to enforce that, because life being what it is, people will park in a spot that's empty regardless. But I think it's important because they do have a problem with parking in the winter. Matt's absolutely right. They have, all our streets in town are subject to, I'm sure everybody's seen the signs that says no parking this street from, such and such a time in the evening to 7 a.m.
I had one other question, if I may, Jim. I'm interested in the special conditions of this property that distinguish it from other commercial properties on Main Street. Could you talk to that?
Yeah, what I had indicated is that this property has 3. It has the Christian Science building, and on your plan it's listed as Mass Landing. So it's got that structure, then it has the next structure, and then the 2 that were approved in this site plan. It had the art place. And so my comment was that the historic and multiple uses on this lot and the size of it when compared to other properties in downtown is what makes this different than the other properties. There are small lots on, right in downtown, but they don't have the number of buildings and, uses on it as this one.
So is this one of the larger buildings on North Main Street then, in that sense?
I think this probably is one of the larger buildings. I can't think of one that's, one individual building that's much larger.
Okay. Close. And that's because it goes deep.
Yes, it does. It goes deeper, yes.
Other questions of Mr. Rhines?
Just one more. The proposed, the commercial building that we're talking about is referred to as Durgan Stables, but isn't also this section to the rear part of Durgan Stables?
It
even
is-
though it's not part of this project?
It is not. Where they're converting it is on the reduced plan that you have. There's a bold section, and it says
Understood.
proposed commercial building. It's the second floor of that portion of the building only.
Because some of these parking spaces here are allowed use for the commercial businesses in this other building as well.
Correct.
So,
That is correct. But if they designated them, then those patrons, because of the central business district, would have to find parking spaces either out on the street or somewhere else in town.
thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Ryans? Thank you. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the applicant? Or favor, maybe opposed? We'll do both at the same time. Would you please stand and tell us, identify yourself for the listening audience?
My name is Douglas Phillips. I'm the president of the Wolfeboro Bay Manor Association, and we're here tonight at our property is we're kind of a model for the same scenario as the applicant, given that we are 11 units. 8 residential and 3 commercial. But because we are a condo association, we're owner occupied. Each of those units is assigned a parking place, 1 through 11, none of which are assigned to the commercial unit's customers. So other parking has to be provided. So, adding a little bit of reality, parking is a huge issue behind Main Street, including the Durgan Stables, Marketplace, and Wolfeboro Bay Manor. Policing is probably on the honor system. We have a policy where we sign each individual parking place, and we sign each owner, that unit. The signs are sensitive to the snow removal, so they're removed in the winter. At the same time, our residential occupants go from 8 to 2. They live there 12 months out of the year, but in fact, their choice is not to live there 100% of the time. But they have on-call, as-needed parking guaranteed. I can't imagine, even though our condominiums are owner-occupied, that an apartment would have to have the same type of, got to carry my groceries in, and it won't be from dockside up to my apartment. So I canvassed all of our owners before coming tonight, and there was not a single objection to going from 2 to 3 residential units, understanding that the applicant's chosen to come in front of you because he's chosen 3 rather than 2. However, I'm obligated to voice a concern that designated parking for sole on-call as needed on whatever basis, we feel strongly that's required because we right now live marketplace, those are deeded parking places to the owners of the Wolfeboro marketplace. So deeded by number of spaces, allocated by number of spaces, and has really very little to do with designated for store. They're deeded spaces by parking. So if the board, since again the applicant's chosen to do 3, now he's asking for permission as opposed to just 2, we would like a strong consideration for a minimum of 4, one swing space perhaps, to be designated within a reasonable distance of their front door and their kitchen. It's the only thing we'd ask. Again, from a practical standpoint, we live that problem. And it's not just over the season, it's also in the winter. The bookstore has a signing. Nobody wants to walk from dockside up to the bookstore for the book signing. It's at 6 o'clock in the evening, it's dark, it's snowing. Our residents have gone, and by the way, in the spirit of being a neighbor, we've had nothing but good relationships with the marketplace. We share the green space, we share the payment, maintain the green space for the community. It works out very well. So, but we would like to see some level of signage or something that says those are for the residential units. The impact to the retail customers, I would like to know if the lease is written around the availability of close parking. Probably not, but I can't imagine that 5 out of 9 going residential is going to make any of our commercial owners happy, and becomes quite an issue. So I'll leave in your good hands with our concerns. Again, across the board, we don't have any objection. See, heard no objection to the proposal, other than perhaps staff consideration.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question for Matt.
Yeah.
If it was approved for just 2 units, what parking requirements would there be? The 2 units? Is it still a
3 spaces.
Right.
3 spaces. It would be 1 per unit plus 1 visitor.
Thank you.
So it's 3, then they need 4 or 5?
So if you have 3 units,
I was having trouble hearing him. For 2 units, did he say you needed 3
3,
spaces?
yes.
Okay, thank you for it.
Yeah.
so it's 1 per unit plus 1 per visitor per 3 units. So in fact, the
5
requirement
spaces.
here would be
4.
4 spaces total. Yeah, it's 4 parking spaces.
4 for 3 units?
Okay.
Yeah, the ordinance is,
Can you use the mic?
the ordinance is somewhat unclear. The ordinance speaks to, in the CBD, Wolfeboro Falls district, it's 1 per unit plus 1 per 3 as a visitor space. But it also says that for a 3-unit building, the requirement is 5 spaces. For a 4-unit building, the requirement is 7 spaces. So it's not really clear whether or not, in this case, you exercise a 5-unit requirement or a 4-space requirement or a 5-space requirement.
So a 2-unit requirement would require 3 spaces.
That's correct.
That's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
This would then be determined when the application for a permit, so we'll just require in our conditions that there be designated spaces based upon the town code?
That would be an
Okay.
excellent way to approach it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against? All right, I'll close the public hearing. Thank you all for your participation. Comments? Let's go through any general discussion, or should we just go through the,
General discussion? Can the board enlighten me as to where those members who do find them, special conditions exist? I'm struggling with special conditions of the property, and if any members of the board feel that there are some and they're easy to find, or they have a reason why they think they are there, I'd be happy for guidance.
Yeah, Mike, as you can guess, I was struggling with that too. That's why I asked the question. Dave, sorry, David.
I think, Mike, if you think of it this way, that most of the buildings downtown in that whole area have no parking whatsoever. This piece of property is a little bit different in that it has some parking. Most of these other buildings on either side of the street, blacks, any of them, they have no parking at all. This piece of property, the building next to it has parking, Marketplace has parking, but most anything else downtown I'm aware of has no parking. The Avery Block, Dockside, Wolfeboro Casuals, any of those, the dive shop, nobody has parking. So this is a little bit unique in that we can designate parking on this particular property. To me, that's unique from all the others down there.
That's enough for you to make special conditions?
Yeah, it is for me.
Thank you, Dave.
Plus, I feel that the reduction from, you got 14 less spaces that would be required, from commercial to residential, and he's allowed to have 2, he's asking for 3, and he has enough designated parking to do what I think most of us are looking for, and also the condominiums next door are looking for. So I think it's kind of unique, in my opinion, to anything else in that area. Across the street in particular, there's no parking over there. Yum Yum Shop, any of those. The Realtors, nobody has parking, other than Main Street, which was brought up, but you can't usually designate those to a specific business.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with any of it. I think the reduction in the parking requirement, you can have 2, 3, he's got enough parking for 5 spaces. And I feel personally that all the other things have been met, so.
I have no trouble with the other portions of it,
Yep.
simply as special conditions. I mean, fair and reasonable use is not a problem for me either. Fair and substantial relationship between the ordinance and the application is no problem for me really either. I can't answer number 4. I have no real expertise for commercial real estate value changes, but I suspect there'll be a diminution of value. The other 3, numbers 1 through 3, I have no difficulty with. It was simply special conditions that caused a hurdle in my mind, and I can, given what you have suggested, I can find special conditions in this case. So I'd be willing, unless you want to go through all 4 of them, to make a general motion to approve, if that's what the board wishes.
Sarah?
I'm not certain that I'm convinced about the special conditions, because you've got downtown anyways, you look at a block. If you have a dozen businesses on that block, everybody is vying for the same half a dozen parking places as their off-site parking. We have had parking problems downtown like forever, and everybody is going to use off-site parking, and it's always the same spot that everybody's trying to use. But if you're talking about businesses, people are in and they're out, and they don't stay there necessarily all day, except for maybe the realtors' cars. But then you have a resident, and you have no guarantee that the person in that apartment is not going to be working within a walking distance. So those cars may be there 24 hours a day, or only when they go off someplace shopping out of town. So we know that that particular area has a lot of parking issues with the people that have the deeded spaces, and the people that are next door, they try to get their residents to have assigned spaces, and it's not exactly working. So I don't think this is special. So they have a few places. You have two buildings next door to this that have a few spaces. I just don't know in good conscience I can say, well, you know, they can have two. Why not leave it at that? Why compound the parking problem? Why compound the neighborhood problem right there?
I would agree with you that there is a serious parking issue downtown. Currently, our ordinances do not address that. They simply say, if you can find space within 500 feet, you're fine. Remember, we approved the Lone Wolf Brewery brew pub with an enormous number of potential parking requirements on the basis of an ordinance that said you can find parking within 500 feet, you're fine. You're not required to actually define where those parking spaces are. You're simply required to show that there are probably 80 spaces within 500 feet of your business. And there's no regulation for residential units in the CBD one either. So we don't really have an ordinance on which we can hang a denial for parking. I think the planning board needs to address the issue of downtown parking in some reasonable fashion that is amenable to both the businesses and the potential residential units that are there. I disagree. I think Dave made a good case that this structure with its conversion to residential provides, because it was originally commercial, parking spaces, the number to be determined based upon the ordinances at the time of permitting, that are not available to any other commercial structure down there because they don't have parking. They rely on the original ordinance. So that, in my mind, that distinguishes this application and this structure from any other that might come before us in a commercial building that wants to convert to residential. It doesn't have parking to point to.
And in my mind, after hearing everyone speak, the net loss is one parking space because he does not need a variance to convert it to 2 residential units, and he's going to have to reserve 3 parking spaces per the the planner read us. So we're only talking about 1 parking space in downtown, so the impact is really not as significant as it appeared when I first read this package.
The other comment, thinking about the businesses that are there that are going to lose those spaces, it's between the landlord and those businesses, not us.
Right.
They'll have a challenge.
Other comments? Let's do a motion, Mike, yeah.
I move that the Zoning Board of Adjustment approve case number 12-Cap-B-17, tax map 217-35, applicant 15 North Main Street LLC, to allow for the conversion of 5 commercial office units on the second floor to 3 residential units, property located at 15 North Main Street, with conditions 1 through 5 as appearing in the planner's review and here cited by reference. And condition number 6, that dedicated parking spaces be dedicated for the residential units to be converted, number based upon, Fred, help me out.
The current Wolfeboro Town Code, which would be applied at the time the permit for construction is obtained.
Okay. We'll incorporate that language into the motion. That's the motion then.
I have one question. Should it also be listed that they should be labeled as such?
Well, I said dedicated.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would assume that would mean label Unit 1.
Reserved parking.
That would come at the time of permitting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'm abstaining.
Please mark the record that Sarah Silk abstained. Thank you. You're all welcome to stay to hear us discuss the minutes. We will not serve coffee. All right, let's get to the minutes now.
There's a lot of stuff missing out of those files.
Yeah, well, look at the years.
Thank you.
2002?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we have the minutes of the regular meeting of September 18th. Any comments on the first page?
Yes.
Sarah?
I believe that Suzanne Ryan was excused.
I believe both were excused.
Did you notify that you can come?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
So they're both excused.
Other comments on page 1? Page 2? Sarah, go ahead.
For some reason, on this particular application, there was a very brief, up at the top of page 2, just very brief, and I know there was quite a discussion about the steep slope and the septic system constraining the placement of that garage as a reason for why that was approved.
So we should instruct Robin to re-listen to the tape and pick up some of the discussion?
Either that or just add a sentence in there somewhere about steep slope and placement of the septic system constraining the placement of the garage to this very small area. We don't need to pay her to look over the tape. She can just add the sentence.
Okay.
I also thought that we said more than simply the board agreed this criteria
Yes, yeah.
met. I think we might have a sentence or two for each one of the conditions. This is going to stand in the record, and I would like the record to be about as full as the board meeting was.
Other comments on page 2? Page 3? Comments? Third paragraph, Mike Hodder asked roof over the laundry room. I think it's whether the roof over the laundry room will be higher.
Didn't like the way I said it. Roof over the laundry room? Anything you want to change, Frank?
I'll withdraw my comment if Mr. Hodder would like it to read that way. Anything else on page 3? Let's go to page 4. Sarah?
On the Fisher case, probably right after where it says Mike Hodder recused himself and Dave Senecal was seated for the hearing, I think it should be noted earlier in the meeting that I had actually said it just before the second case because I had my papers out of order, but I think it should be noted that Matt Sullivan produced page 2 for both the Norway Plains and the Shaheen Finney letters that we were missing so that all the board members read it in like a 2-minute, 3-minute span of time, and then we moved on because our packets weren't complete.
Okay. Other comments on page 4? Page 5?
The very last sentence says, no in-person spoke in favor. So I think it just dropped the in.
Okay. Third paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, where they're talking about Justice Hance. She's at that time, she was of Sheehan and Finney, not or. And 4 lines down, reconfiguration is currently under review by town council. I think there's got to be something that says period and in addition, or in addition, a driveway maintenance agreement is currently under review. In the next to last paragraph, second line, the board noted the following, colon. Anything else on page 5? Page 6? Any comments on 6? Going once, going twice? Page 7.
On the first paragraph that talks about Hank Y, need to cap Y. Hank's last name is not capped on the,
Hank, why step down?
Hank Y stepped down, yeah.
And you cap the W, not the Y?
That's a very good
He's
point,
smart
Fred.
and fast tonight, isn't he?
I spent the entire day reading insurance statutes.
Wearing blue jeans, does it?
Anything else on page 7? Page 8. Going once, going twice.
Well, if we move to adjourn.
Do we need a motion?
Yes,
to-
you do. Move to,
I'll make a motion to approve as amended.
all in favor? Mr. Senecal, did you have a motion you wanted to make?
Move to adjourn.
Any second? All in favor?